how to play with your children. Now, it's quite strange that we are talking about how to play with your child, because surely that comes naturally. Well, actually, the research shows that it doesn't. And that's why, that's the reason for tonight's talk. So I'm going to start, and just, if you wouldn't mind just giving me a little bit of time while I sort out my presenting to you. We're going to start with a little girl called Molly, who is the youngest person who's ever done a TED Talk. And she's got some very interesting things to say. So let's, I didn't mute myself. Hold on, because it causes an echo. We tested this, it did work. Give me a minute, please. Oh my goodness, is that not typical? That, let me stop that and try again. Right. Sorry, we went through this entire process to check that it all was working, and I'm just going to hop out and then hop back in, and then I'll be back. Give me a sec.
What if I was to tell you that a game of peekaboo could change the
We can't hear anything now.
Trace, when you were off mute, we could hear it, but we couldn't see it. But now that you are muted, we can't hear anything.
Okay, thank you. I'll stay off mute. Hopefully it doesn't echo too badly. That's why I had to put myself on mute.
What if I was to tell you that a game of peekaboo could change the world? Thanks to scientists, we now know just how important the first 5 years are for our health and development, especially our brains. Our brains develop faster in our early years than at any other time in our lives. It can create up to 1 million neural connections every second, but we need your help. Our healthy development depends on these top 5 things. 1, connecting. 2, talking. 3, playing. 4, a healthy home. 5, community. All of this helps our brains and us reach our full potential. So what's something you can do that can really...
Sorry, I'm just wanting to check. Can everybody see the video?
No.
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 Oh, my goodness. So here I'm sitting back thinking this is working swimmingly.
What if I was to tell you...
Okay, hold on a sec. Sorry.
that it...
And as I say, this was all working so brilliantly, and it's absolutely guaranteed that as you get to doing it, things kind of go pear-shaped.
tell you
Can you see it now?
that a game of peekaboo...
No.
No, we can't trace, but
Right.
actually it's better. I mean, if we can hear her, it's not a problem because it's in what she has to say that's important, I think.
Can you hear her? I can't,
We can hear her clearly, Tracy.
Okay.
change the world. Thanks to scientists, we now know just how important the first 5 years are for our health and development, especially our brains. Our brains develop faster in our early years than at any other time in our lives. It can create up to 1 million neural connections every second. But we need your help. Our healthy development depends on these top 5 things. 1. Connecting. 2. Talking. 3. Playing. 4. A healthy home. 5. Community. All of this helps our brains and us reach our full potential. So what's something you can do that can really make a difference? Scientists call it serve and return. That's just a grown-up way of saying connect, talk, and play with us. Copycat games build imagination and empathy.
Okay, so here we've got a dad who's doing a copycat game with his baby.
Naming games build vocabulary and attention.
Dad's showing himself and then the baby.
And games like peekaboo, yep, peekaboo, actually build memory and trust. Each time you talk to us, play with us, make us laugh, it not only builds and strengthens our relationships and mental health, it actually teaches us some of the most important life skills, from making friends to taking the test, to getting a job, to one day maybe even starting a family of our own. Let's see what happens when the connection is taken away.
Okay, so now Dad's picked up his iPad. He's still right in front of the
So now he's
baby.
trying to get his dad's attention again. He's reaching out like, that was fun, why have you stopped? I know it's important for adults to use their devices sometimes, but kids are hardwired to seek out meaningful connections. Not receiving them causes confusion and stress. What if our whole childhood was like that last 30 seconds? How hard it would be for a child to feel calm, to feel safe, to learn to trust anyone, and the lifelong impact that would have. So please try to remember, the most special period for our development is the first 5 years. What's something really impactful you can do? Serve and return. And when? Early and often. Imagine the difference we could make if everyone everywhere did this.
Right. Sorry about that. I'm not quite sure how that happened. So little Molly, who is only 7 years old, is the youngest person ever to have presented a TED Talk. And what she had to say was really important. And this is something that is scientists all around the world are researching the importance of play. And it's one of the reasons that at Kyalami schools, Bowley Prep and at Kyalami Prep Nursery School, that our focus is on play. And there are two sides of play. One is completely unstructured play where children just literally do their own thing. And then the other thing is facilitated play. And what we do at BeNS is we have a mix of both of those. Some of the play activities are guided. Some of them are just free play where we let the children choose what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. So I'm going to try to share my screen again. Let's hope that I can get my, can you see that PowerPoint presentation? No?
Not yet.
No.
Oh my gosh, Gabby, we got this all sorted perfectly. None of it is working. Okay, give me a moment. Okay, I'm actually going to do it without the slide. What I can do is I'll make the slides available to you. Gabby will send you a link and then you can actually see the slides. The slides were more just to guide me so that I don't go off topic. So if you don't mind just looking at my face rather than reading the slides, that would be great. So one of the most important things that we know, and it's been a focus of BeNS this year, is that children cannot learn unless they are in a good emotional space. So when there is trauma in the home, when there is unhappiness in the home, that affects children's ability to learn. A child who comes to school who is very, very unhappy cannot learn effectively. So emotionally, that is the first place that we need to make sure we take care of our children. And as parents, your job there is to give them the nurture and the love and the security that they need, and then obviously encourage that as they come into school. And for those of you with little ones in triple naught, you will know that the first couple of weeks, you have one of two things. You either have a child who comes in and is absolutely fine, and suddenly in week 3, the wheels really come off, or we have lots of tears. And in fact, coming back now just after lockdown, we had a couple of days of tears with 1 or 2 children, not many, but that is perfectly normal. It's that moving from being at home, being around mom and dad, being in that warm, fuzzy environment, and then coming into school. And it can be a little unsettling. So that's the first thing we need to make sure of when we are when we're wanting to facilitate play with children. So what play does is it allows children to use their creativity while they're developing the skills that they need for learning and for lifelong skills. So their physical skills are being developed, their cognitive thinking skills, their emotional strength is being tested, their dexterity in their fingers. All of those things are important. And as Molly says, play is important for brain development. So it's through play that at a very early age, children are starting to learn and to develop. So now the latest research, and this has been happening in about the last 10 to 15 years, which is not a very long time at all in terms of research. There's been a big focus on what the difference is with children who play with their parents as opposed to playing with their peer group. And you can imagine if a 2-year-old is playing with another 2-year-old, there's probably pretty limited language skills that are happening there, as an example. When a child is playing with a parent, not only can you mirror what the child is doing, but you can actually verbalize what the child is doing. And in fact, even with a young baby, there seems to be research is showing that up until babies become really mobile or develop language skills, adults find it much easier to interact with babies. And why? Because there's no kind of almost like a judgment. No, dad, you're not doing that right. Or no, mom, don't, cats don't walk like that. So when we play with a baby, we automatically are silly. We automatically blow raspberries at them and tickle their tummies and roughhouse with them and do the peekaboo thing and put words to the actions that we're doing. So we'll pick up and we'll go, yes, that's a pen. Clever boy, that happens to be a green pen. So we're developing their language skills. So that the opportunity of children playing with somebody older who's got good language skills is really important. But what they have found is that parent-child play is linked to the child's creativity. It's linked to their working memory, and working memory is what is critical for learning at school. It develops their gross motor skills, so all their big muscles. It develops their cognitive flexibility, so their ability to think about things and to change their thinking, to think outside the box, to problem solve. And obviously their emotional development, including how to regulate their emotions, which is also really important. If you can imagine that I hadn't learned to regulate my emotions and my presentation wasn't working, I could have reacted in a completely different way, as a toddler does when they don't get their way. What do? They lie on the floor, they shout and scream, they cry. It's really not appropriate. And those are just a few of the activities that we do. But there is a lot on parents' to-do lists, and more so than ever before. The economic demands on families is huge, especially in a school like ours. So playing with your child doesn't necessarily come to the top of your list. Whether you're working at home or whether you're working away from home, you come home at the end of the day, you've had a stressful day, you've got a whole lot of things on your to-do list, and playing with your kids doesn't really make it to the top. But it really is important. As Molly said, the first 5 years are absolutely crucial. So getting down with your children and playing and just goofing off for a couple of minutes, 5 minutes a day. Everybody can manage 5 minutes a day. That can actually also shave some of the stress off your day. So if you can imagine getting those little giggles that we get from young children when you're playing with them, particularly the kind of rough housing and that sort of thing, that really feeds you as well. It encourages the oxytocin in your bloodstream to move around your body. So it's a win-win situation for everybody. The other thing that is quite difficult in play is that adults often are very self-conscious about their play. And for those of you who have seen Google Meets with your children's teachers, you might see that for some teachers, when they start, it's a little bit more awkward because they know that you're in the room. Teachers are very different when you're not in the room. And that's not because we're beating the children. It's because we're finding it difficult to let go and just relax. When we're with the children, playing and being silly and doing the kinds of things that we do in a morning ring or a welcome song is very different to what happens when there are other adults watching. And so even for some adults, the fact that their child is watching them, possibly making judgments, although children don't do that, it is difficult for parents to just let go and just be. So that self-consciousness is something that is really difficult. In children, play is inbred. It's their way of communication. So there's no boundary for a child between play and reality. So when your child is being a dinosaur, he really is being a dinosaur. When you're being a dinosaur to play with him, you're acting like a dinosaur. So there's a big discrepancy between that. The good news is the more you do it, the easier it becomes. The more you do it, the more natural it becomes. And before you know it, you'll be doing it in the local restaurant. So for the sake of our next generation, we really need you to get down and play with your kids. Play has been termed as being so important to children that they actually liken it to on the same level as nutrition and sleep. And we know that children who don't eat properly and children who don't sleep properly have issues. They're ratty, they're irritable, they're not happy. It's the same thing with play. The United Nations has actually recognized play as a fundamental human right because of the effect it has to developing well-adjusted adults. So the first question, of course, is how long do you need to play with your child? Well, the good news is you don't need to set a timer, but what you really do need to try and do, especially if it's something that it doesn't come naturally to you and it's not something that you've done automatically, start with 5 minutes, but it needs to be 5 minutes every day. On days that you can, make it longer. Sometimes when you play for 5 minutes, it's quite hard work because you're not getting much feedback from your child, and I'll explain to you now how to do that. So those first 5 minutes can feel quite like they're taking a long time. You can feel like there's not much feedback happening, so it does become difficult. But the more you stick with it, the easier those 5 minutes become, and the easier your child will also start realizing that actually you're a playmate. As your children get older and as they get more used to the types of play that you have with them, you can extend that time. Obviously, there's no limit on how long you can spend with your child in playing with them, but it is important to play with them every day, even if it is just for those 5 minutes. The experts reckon that it is the most ideal thing is to have a scheduled playtime during the day. Personally, I disagree with that. I think that any time is a good time to play with your child. If your child is ready. So if your child is about to go down for a nap, that's probably not the best time to play with the child. Although, as most moms know, that's often the times that dads prefer to play with their children and really rev them up just before bedtime. But just keep in mind that the more often you play with your child, the better it is for them. Okay. So I divided the kinds of things that you can do with children into 2 age groups. I haven't included babies in this because, as I say, the research has found that people do interact more easily with infants in those kinds of things that I spoke about earlier. So I've divided into 2 groups. First of all is the 1 to 3 year olds, which is just the age at which children are just coming into our nursery school, and then from 3 to 6 year olds. So there are a couple of things here that, as I go through them, you might think, oh, that's too babyish for my child, but you might find that there are things there that actually will work for your child. Okay, so one of the biggest mistakes that adults do when they're playing with a child is they actually just try too hard. Play needs to be a natural thing. And as I said, it often doesn't come naturally to parents. Just take a step back and remember that your child, when you're playing, is in charge. Your rules around respect of a grown-up, etc., are still in place, but your child is going to lead the play, and that is the most important thing. So it's a process that comes from the child, and what the best thing to do is to catch your child playing and to just sit and observe, and then as they're playing, either mirror what they're doing. So for example, if they're playing with blocks and they're stacking the blocks one on top of each other, take your own few blocks and start stacking them. And what you'll notice is that with young children, they'll stop, they'll watch you, and then they'll continue. Then they may knock the blocks over to watch what you're going to do. What would you do? You would also knock the blocks over. And in that, the child's going, okay, mom or dad are watching me. They're copying what I'm doing. It means they're okay with this. I can continue doing that. So follow your child's non-verbal cues, just in literally what they're doing, especially if they are too little to be able to speak. But it's also important that you actually add your verbalization to that. So with the example with stacking blocks again, as you're stacking your blocks, you can say, I'm putting this block on top, and I'm putting the next block on top, and I'm making a tower. And then knock the little tower over and say, oh my goodness, I've knocked the tower over. And you should probably, the response you'll get from your child is that they should laugh. And then you laugh, and then you can start the process over again. Repetitive play is also really important, doing the same thing over again, because repetition builds confidence, and confidence builds competence. The other thing is when your child is playing with something, accept that what they are naming the thing to be what it is. So a Tupperware container, for example, can be a pirate ship. And you can't say, that's not a pirate ship, that's a Tupperware container and it's rectangular, because that's not what the child needs. The child needs to believe that that container is a pirate ship. And they might put 2 pom-poms in it for cannonballs or whatever the case may be. Things that you can do, move your couch away from the wall. Makes the most awesome hidey place. It can become a bear cave. It can become a secret city. You can put a blanket over the top of it and it becomes a fort. So you don't need to have anything fancy to be able to play with your children. You can play with what you've got. You could try taking a big packet of dry pasta, dump it on the lounge floor and see what happens. And then mirror your child. So one of the important things as well is when you're playing with your child is not to enforce the tidying up with them, but to encourage it and to model it. So once you've had your playtime, you can say, right, we finished playing now because we're going to have lunch or whatever, or go for a walk. Let's pack away. If the child doesn't pack away with you, then you just encourage them and say, come and help daddy, come and help mommy to pack these away. Let's put these blocks in that box. But don't enforce it. If they suddenly jump up and run away, say, oh, okay, next time, hopefully you can help mom or dad. What we're trying to encourage here is we're trying to encourage imaginative play. So the examples that I've given are not, so Lego is a good example, because Lego, when it first started out and the Duplo, were just rectangular or square blocks. Now, you get the Lego horse and you get the whole Lego pirate scene and you get the Lego construction toys. So it's become each thing, it's very difficult to take something that looks exactly like a digger or a tractor and say that it's a bicycle, because you can't do that. So things that could represent things, just that block could be a house, it could be a brick, it could be something else. What we're trying to encourage in those kinds of games is imaginative play. So once your child has accepted that you've come in to play with them, then you need to stay close by to them, okay? And you need to, as I say, you need to mirror or reflect what they're playing. If you're wanting to extend the play a little bit, you can say, oh, mom wants to build a shop. And you can take your blocks and say, I'm building a shop, and there's the counter, and your child might engage with that, but rather be led by them, okay? In all of that, your child is learning. So you're reflecting on what they're doing, you're mirroring in what they're doing. If your child is playing in the kitchen with some of your kitchen utensils, they are some of the best toys in the world. Pots and pans and wooden spoons are fantastic. I wouldn't suggest your Le Creuset items, but certainly Tupperware and metal pots and things. You can say, oh, I see you're cooking. What are you cooking? What are you using? Yes, that's a pot, or that's a pan, or that's a dish. Small children also love to show off the skills that they've achieved. So what you can do with that is when they achieve something, you can say to them, doesn't that make you feel good? Don't you feel proud of yourself? Rather than saying, I'm so proud of you. What we want the children to do is we want them to become intrinsically proud of what they have done, as opposed to seeking your approval. Your approval obviously is really important, but the most important thing is saying, don't you feel good about yourself? I would feel good if I was you, or I would be so proud of you if that was me. The most important thing is to relax and to have fun. That's the most important thing. It is work, but it is fun. Other types of activities that you can do with this age group from 1 to 3-year-olds is building puzzles. Obviously not, an adult puzzle, but puzzles that are appropriate for that age group. Big chunky pieces that the child can manipulate with their fingers. And you can do that by taking turns. Say, I'm going to put a piece in. Where shall we put your piece? And then they can try and fit it, try and manipulate it. You can help them a little bit. Don't let them get too frustrated because then they want to give up. But just help them a little bit and support them in that kind of thing. This teaches them to take turns. It teaches them all sorts of advanced problem-solving skills. It teaches them to take parts and make a whole. It teaches them to take the whole and break it up into parts. So puzzles are really important. Duplo blocks and Lego blocks I've also spoken about, and those are also really good for their fine motor development. A ball is a necessity in every home. And for young children, we recommend a ball the size of a soccer ball, not much smaller than that because their hands are very little. So we go from big balls down to smaller balls. Kicking a ball backwards and forwards in the yard. And you can say to them, kick the ball to me, I'm going to kick the ball back to you. So we're teaching about kicking it to and kicking it back. Batting the ball with your hands, trying to see if they can hit one of those balls with a stick or a plank of wood or something like that. So any kind of ball activities are absolutely fabulous. Roughhousing is really important. Whether your children are boys or girls, they both need equal amounts of roughhousing. And what roughhousing does, that kind of imaginative wrestling play where you're tumbling around on the carpet together or in the garden on the lawn. One of the things that teaches children is about emotional bonding, and it teaches them about being safe with you. Flying them around like Superman above your head. Turn on the music and have a dance party in the kitchen while you're cooking dinner. Children love to do that. Then once you've got them playing with items, and as I say, they don't have to be the actual items. You can have things that represent things. You can start helping them to extend their play. So if your child is playing outside in the sand and he's got a block or something that he's using to pretend that it's a car, you can just very casually with your foot create like a little track and then say, oh, why don't we drive the car along the road? And then your child will follow that and drive the car along the road. This helps them to become curious and assists them in becoming further engaged with you. And then the other thing that toddlers love to do is they love to copy you. Just like you can stick out your tongue and say, can you stick out your tongue? And then they stick out your tongue and you can both laugh about that. Can you pull your ear? And then they can pull their ear. So let them imitate you. And then that also goes into skills of daily living. So things like gardening, working in the kitchen. If you're working in the garden and you're digging in the soil, give your child appropriate utensils and get them to help you in a little patch where they're not going to dig up your latest seedlings, but where they can actually play and pretend that they're doing the same thing as you. Set up a play kitchen in your kitchen and let them mix things. Let them experience what it feels like to mix flour and water. It's a fabulous thing. Corn flour is even better because it's got a very strange consistency. And let them play alongside you. The other activities that are great for children of this age are arts and crafts. So drawing, painting, tearing paper and sticking it onto a piece of cardboard is a little bit tricky for children of this age, but it's something that you can do to assist them. One of the things that is a fabulous activity for your children is to get big paintbrushes, the kinds that you use, the big wide paintbrushes that you would use to paint a fence, for example, and let your child paint with water onto a wall on the outside of your house. And we call that magic painting at school because they paint it with the water and then the water evaporates and it dries and you can go, oh, it's disappeared. Let's do it again. It's also really good for children's shoulder development to actually be working on a vertical surface as opposed to working on a horizontal surface. So anything you can do where they're lifting up their arms, they're having to develop their shoulder girdles is really good for them. So those are a couple of ideas for children of that age. Oh, the other thing, sorry, while I'm talking about painting, is finger painting. Brilliant for children. You can buy ready-made finger paints, or as I always say, Google is your friend. If you go onto Google and you look for a finger paint recipe, there are fabulous things that you can do. Finger painting, I always recommend that it gets done outside because otherwise your walls will go from whatever color you've painted them to something different. So those are a couple of ideas of what you can do with children aged 1 to 3. And then from children through to the age from 3 to about 6, obviously those activities that I've spoken about, you can extend to work with children in this older age group. But we're stepping it up a notch because the children by this stage have started to develop verbal skills. They can interact with you. Their imaginative play becomes much more creative. So you can go to them and say, I'd love some special playtime. What shall we play? And maybe your child says, oh, Mom, can we play doctor? You can go, yes, that'll be great. My recommendation is always that you are the patient because you get to lie down. And then your child can be the doctor and can talk about various things. Your child might say, let's play cats. And then you've got to be on all fours. And you can pretend to be cats doing something. And then you can ask questions. What would you like my cat to do? Does my cat have a name? Mom isn't a good name for a cat. So let's decide that we call it, I don't know, Schnooky or whatever the case may be. So that is developing the child's language skills. And then make sure that you say to your child, what would you like me to do? Sometimes children will say, I don't know, Mom, just be a cat. And then you've got to just let go and be creative. Sometimes your child will give you directions. So he'll say, for example, we're going to go and drink milk out of the bowl. And then you would pretend to do that. So that imaginative play is really, really important. One of the things that parents often do and that caregivers often do is when children are older, they automatically think that play needs to be related to something educational. Just playing is education enough. That imaginative play, as I say, particularly is really important. So you don't have to necessarily play around doing something that is necessarily teaching them to count. But there's also nothing wrong with that. So if you are being a cat for that day, you can say, I wonder how many toys this cat has got. And you can go and collect some things. Shall we count how many toys I've got? And you can count that there are 5 toys, etc. At this age, the other thing that's really important is that your play should involve some negotiation. So if you can imagine children on a playground, your child is never going to be the boss of. They all like to think that they are, but they will not always be allowed to be the person who directs the play and who chooses the rules and who chooses who plays. So it's also a good idea to start negotiating with your child to say, every time we play this game, I always have to be the cat. This time I'd like to be the dog, or I'd like to be the child, or whoever it may be. And then negotiate that and teach your child negotiating skills and about sometimes doing something that somebody else wants to do. So it's really important to do that. I can't stress how important outdoor play is. So whenever possible, play outside with your children. The fresh air for a start is really important. But when they're outside, you tend to play bigger games using bigger muscles. And it's important for our children that we start from the bigger muscles, which is why we often play like a roly-poly game with a baby before we start playing with their fingers. So we get them used to those kinds of things. Older children really need a lot of gross motor development. If you have jungle gyms, fantastic. If you don't, trees are brilliant. We never had jungle gyms growing up. We climbed trees. And the benefit with that is that when you have a look at a jungle gym, the ladder that goes up to the landing or whatever it is on the jungle gym, each of those steps are set apart at the same sort of distance. There's not a lot of planning that has to happen there. When you're climbing a tree, you have to look at what is the next branch that I can stand on, will that branch carry my weight, etc. Which brings me to something which is also some parents find quite difficult, and that is, what if my child falls and hurt themselves? Your job is not to prevent your child from the average tumbles that happen, knocking their head on the edge of the table. Obviously, you make every effort to try and prevent that, falling off a jungle gym, falling out of a tree. Your job is to stop your child from killing itself, not stop them from actually having roughs and tumbles and falling over. That's a really good part of the process of them learning about their position in space. How fast can I run before I hit that wall? Oh, I better not run that fast again. I must slow down beforehand. If you can be less stressed about your child being up a jungle gym in a tree, your child will be less stressed. For those of you who don't know, I have 4 sons, and I had 4 sons virtually under the age of 3 when they were tiny. And we did spend a fair amount of time at Casualty, but we never had a broken arm, broken leg. We had things like toes, noses, collarbones. But the rule with us was, if you can climb up a tree, you need to be able to climb back down. So there's no such thing as calling the fire department because the cat is stuck in the tree. You got up there, you need to be able to get down. And they learn very quickly how to actually plan their movements going up a tree, for example. Obviously, you would be standing there, possibly giving some guidance from the bottom, but allow them to do it themselves. Don't suddenly rush up the jungle gym to save them as such. If you go to the beach, climbing along the rocks is fantastic. Make sure that they're not slippery and that they don't have those sharp little welts and muscles and things on them. But rock climbing is a fantastic thing for young children of preschool age. And I'm talking your 4 to 6s. So I was talking about negotiating with your child when you're playing, because one of the things that they need to do is they need to learn compromise. And you can do this in very simple ways. So if, for example, you're going to the park, you can say to your child, right, we've got 5 minutes left and then we need to go home. And they might go, oh, we're having such fun, can't we play longer? And you can say, okay, how long do you think we should play? They don't know how to tell the time, by the way, so you can make up any time. But if they say, oh, can we stay for 10 minutes? You can say, okay, that's fair enough, but not longer than that. So that your child learns to compromise. Or if they say, please, can't we stay the whole afternoon? Nope, we can only do half an hour. I'll tell you when it's 5 minutes to go, and then we need to go. So we do need to be able to teach our children about compromise, because again, on the playgrounds, they're not always going to get their own way. Yeah, so when children are playing with other children, eventually those kids are going to get fed up and say, we're not playing by your rules. But at the same time, you also need to teach your child, if they are not being given the opportunity, and this is something that as nursery school teachers, we do all the time. When they say they won't play my game, then we call the children together and we say, right, who's had a turn doing what? This time, let's try and play Mary's game, and then send them off on their way. So they need to be able to learn how to compromise and how to negotiate. The other thing that you can try and do with your child, especially if you've got a singleton, is it's a good thing for children to play with children of different age groups. And by that, I don't mean let your child get on a bike and ride around the complex with all the teenagers. Absolutely not. But it's a good thing for you to teach your child how to play with older children. So if you can imagine 2 4-year-olds throwing a ball to each other, they're really not going to be able to play for long because they can't throw the ball straight to each other consistently. And very quickly, one of the two of them are going to get up. But give that 4-year-old an 8-year-old to play with, and suddenly the game will last much longer. So if you have the opportunity for that, whether it's brothers, whether it's cousins, whether it's people if you live in a complex environment, that you are there, allow your child to be pushed a little bit, to be extended a little bit. It is also really good for the older child, and for those of you with multiple children in your families will know that your older child learns kindness. They learn tolerance. They learn to back off a little bit. So it's a win-win situation for all of them. The other thing that children of this age absolutely love to do is dressing up. So it's certainly in grade 0, we have a multitude of dress-up clothes, but they are not specific theme-related clothes. Yes, there is a princess cape, and yes, there's a fireman's helmet and a pilot's jacket, but children can change the clothing around to be anything that they want to be. So not your most precious Jimmy Choo shoes necessarily, but they love to play in mom and dad's shoes. They love to have their little feet in those big shoes. Let them have the opportunity to play with some of your other clothes, or some of your clothes that are bigger. One of your blouses can be a dress. One of dad's ties can be a multitude of things. Just random bits of rectangular fabric make fantastic capes. And again, it allows your child to be creative, and it allows them to turn something that's absolutely ordinary into something that is extraordinary that they have chosen. What they love even more is watching mom or dad dress up. So putting on a funny hat. When I go into the classrooms every now and again with the Fun Friday and I'm wearing a weird hat, the children absolutely love it. And all I've done is put on a Dr. Seuss hat or put on a crown. So that is really great. And then when you are playing with imaginative play, that's when your preschooler really needs to take charge. That's where you need to show them that you value their ideas, but that you can also modify their ideas. Okay, great. You want me to be a policeman, but do we have to go and chase a baddie? Because that's not the only thing that policemen do. Policemen help people and teach them that kind of thing. Remember, when you're engaged in imaginative play with your child, nobody's looking except your child, and your child sees every single thing that you do. So just like that old saying goes, dance like nobody's watching, play like nobody's watching as well. Then there are also all sorts of fantastic fine motor activities that you can do, making Play-Doh, kinetic sand, tearing magazine pictures. Those are great ways to work all their fine motor skills. And it's also a really good way for parents to de-stress. If you've ever actually played with some Play-Doh before, it makes a fantastic stress ball. So if you've had a long day, Play-Doh is the way to go. Roll it out into snakes, make spirals, do all sorts of things. Preschool children also love being valued as part of the family. So again, that brings me back to those skills of daily living that I was talking about with the little ones. Let them help you to make supper. Okay, I've yet to hear of a child who has killed themselves using a kitchen knife to cut up courgettes, for example. Okay, let them butter bread. Help them to make their sandwiches for school the next morning. Give them responsibilities that are appropriate for their age. So you wouldn't necessarily get them to wash your cut glass crystal, but certainly they can stand at the sink on a little ladder or stepping stool, and they can wash their own plastic dishes, even if you have to go back and wash them again afterwards. It's a really good thing for them to learn. Teach them how to match socks when you're folding laundry. Teach them how to fold laundry. I'm not talking about folding a dress shirt, but folding a towel or a face cloth is a very easy thing to do. And they really love to be helpers as well. And then the other thing is that children love it when you can talk to them about things that they are interested in. So that's easy when you've got a child who loves dinosaurs or who loves Barbies or who loves ponies. But there are also things, because as much as we try not to encourage too much of it, our children do watch television. And actually they're at a slight disadvantage if you say there's no television at all in my house. Because then when the other children are talking about their favorite Paw Patrol characters, your child doesn't have any frame of reference. So there do need to be some gives and takes in that. Sit and watch one of the programs with them. Ask them who the different characters are. Learn the names of the different Paw Patrol characters as you like. My 30-year-old twins have just acquired a dog, and they've called him Rubble. They don't watch Paw Patrol, but anyway. And then obviously the older the children get, ramp up that roughhousing. So dads, particularly with your boys and even with your girls, you can get much more physical with your wrestling and that kind of thing. It's really good from a sensory perspective. It's really good for them from an emotional perspective. It helps them to get rid of all those bottled up frustrations and things like that. And then lastly, I just want to quickly give you another couple of suggestions. And as I say, the presentation that I've got has got each of these things written down, and I will email those to you if you'd like. So things like play hide and seek, but change it up a bit. Play it in the dark with a torch. Kids love it. Playing ball, I've already spoken about it. It's absolutely brilliant. And as I say, every single home should have a ball, and every child should be able to throw and catch a ball by the time that they fall. Make paper airplanes. Older children, you'll be able to show them carefully. And I know that certainly Mrs. Behan's class is going through a paper airplane phase at the moment. Once you've taught them a couple of times, they'll be able to make it on their own, and then have paper airplane races. See who's can fly the furthest. Playing with balloons, and this is fantastic for children of all ages. If you've got a very small space or it's a rainy day and you want to play inside, use a balloon and use your hands to bat it to each other. A balloon really can't hurt anybody. Making collages out of old magazines, out of all sorts of things. You can use fabric, you can use sweet wrappers, you can use tinfoil and make collages. And again, you don't have to spend a lot of money. You need a glue stick, or runny glue is even better, and an old cereal box, and stick all the bits onto the cereal box and see who can make the most spectacular collage. You can also add stickers, and if you're in Mrs. Roscoe's class, you would certainly add glitter and feathers, all of those kinds of things. The other thing that children really love, and that we're seeing less and less each year, is having puppet shows, where you can take your child's fluffy toys, or even if you've got actual puppets, or make puppets out of a little sock and push the couch to one side, and you sit behind the couch and you put your hand up and you're having a little puppet show, and let everybody have the opportunity to do that. Even if it seems really simplistic, give it great applause, give it a standing ovation, and then say, okay, next time we do a puppet show, why don't we think about this? Also great for rainy days, and the children absolutely love those. Scavenger hunts, where you can say to your child, you can sit very comfortably on the patio late afternoon with a little tipple of your choice and say, right, go and find me something that is rough. And they can run into the garden and find something that's rough. Go and find me something that is smooth. Maybe they need to go and find a pebble. Can you find me a green leaf? Can you find me a brown leaf? Can you find me something tiny? Can you find me something squishy? And let them collect those things, put them into a little container in front of you, and then you can discuss the different things. What things are alive, what things are not alive. If you have a brown leaf, what's happened to the brown leaf compared to what's happened to the green leaf? It's a fabulous opportunity for language development. Baking and cooking with your children is fantastic. They love being able to measure and pour, and obviously under lots of supervision, and they stir. Very big bowls are great because then they don't spill it all out of the side. And cracking eggs is also not something I'd recommend for this age group, but let them try, because you never know. It may keep them busy for a while just picking the eggshells out. Water fights are fantastic. You don't have to have water guns. You can use water in plastic bottles, the drinking bottles that have got the little non-return valve that you can squeeze. You can have water fights using sponges and a dish of water and see how far you can throw them and how wet people can get. Make sure that you're wearing something that you don't mind if they're getting wet with it, and make sure that you're not on a patio that's got slippery tiles. It's best done on the grass. What were the other things? Go camping in your lounge. And by that, I mean turn the furniture over, use blankets, sheets, whatever you have, and create forts. And if you want to make it really special, add fairy lights. You can put in cushions, and it can stay like that for a weekend. Children need to know that there is certain furniture that a chair doesn't have to be used necessarily just as a chair on its 4 legs. You can turn a chair over and it becomes a triangular shape that they can crawl through and put things through and drape things over. Bike rides and walks outside of your home, obviously where it's safe. Children love going outside their environment and going for a little walk, and you can do a scavenger hunt along that kind of thing as well. And then cloud watching. I was quite surprised, I think it was 2 years ago, I took my grade noughts up to the top field. It was quite a cloudy day, and I said, right, lie on your back and look at the sky. We're going to make pictures from the clouds. And they couldn't do it. They couldn't let their imagination go. They couldn't see that there was a cloud that looked a bit like a lion's face until we sat there for a little while. And then children started saying, oh, that looks like a teapot. And I actually remember the child who said it looked like a teapot, and it really did. Get them to see pictures in other things. So the 3 most important things that I'd like you to remember are that, if you remember what Molly said at the beginning of her video, which was just an audio actually, is children need connection. They need you to talk to them, and they need you to play with them. How do we do that? Serve and return. So you send to them, they send back to you, and go backwards and forwards. And how often do you need to do that? As often as you can. So in the words of George Bernard Shaw, who said, we don't get old, we don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. So thank you for your attention. I'm sorry that I didn't have the slides available, and it worked so perfectly when Gabby and I did a run through earlier. But I will send you those slideshows if you'd like. Please just pop us an email tomorrow, and I'll do that with pleasure. And then I just want to find out, Gabby, were there any questions?
Not yet that I've seen. But folk, if you have questions, you're welcome. Just pop it up in the message screen. Or you can raise your hand, and we'll answer questions as we can. I can't see everybody on my screen, probably because I don't have it correctly set up. Let me just change my layout. Yes, thank you very much for that question. Somebody asked if they could get the recording. What we'll do is I will get Gabby to send an email out tomorrow with the link for the recording, and also the link for the presentation and the video. That video that I had was actually one on Facebook. It was about 3 minutes, but there is a longer YouTube video, and it's really interesting to watch this little girl speak. I will also send the links to Tammy at KPS, because some of our parents tonight are from there, which is great to see.
Lovely. Thanks for joining us, KPNS. Any other questions? Okay. Well, it is 8:27 and we started a couple of minutes late, so you've got a couple of extra minutes. I hope that all of your children are safely in bed and fast asleep, and that you now have got time to just chill and relax and digest it for the evening. I know it was a lot of information and lots of suggestions, which is why you do need those lists to be able to go into the August holidays with lots of things to do. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming, and have a wonderful holiday with your children. We hope to have them all coming back telling us loads of things that they did over the August holidays. And play safely.
Good night, everybody. Sleep
Good night,
tight.
everyone. Thank you, Gabby, for your help in letting people in, and we'll see you tomorrow.
You're welcome. Good night.
Bye.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.